So, today was the official release of the Backrooms movie made by Kane Parsons, another YouTuber turned filmmaker who made his debut with this film. This may honestly be another film that enters into that realm of top tier all-time horror movies. We need a little bit more time to sit with it, but in this review I'm going to go over all of the reasons why I personally love this movie and just some of the themes that I captured. I went into this one actually taking down notes and really planning out what I wanted to say for this video, so let's get right into it. As far as first impressions go, I have 5 things that I wanted to get out first thing off the bat. So my rating on this movie, honestly 10 out of 10. There's not much I would have done different or changed about it. It was really a great movie. My one sentence reaction to this, if I had to give one, would be it's probably the most terrifyingly creative film I've ever watched. And I'm going to get into why very soon. The biggest surprise to me was actually the main character Clark's just arc and what role he ends up playing in the story and the themes that really make this movie what it is, that mainly come from that character but also involve a lot of the other supporting characters, and just really how deep the plot is in general. I didn't really know what direction they were going to go in for this movie, hadn't ever really watched the trailer. I wanted to go into this just knowing what I know about the Backrooms off the internet and just watching it, and they took a completely different route than I could have even imagined. My biggest disappointment, honestly, is the fact that there's not a sequel announced yet, because I want to see more from this universe. I want to see more from Kane Parsons, because this being his first debut movie, much like Curry Barker, I believe both of these young dudes have a very, very bright future in film. Neither one of them are much older than me. Like I said in my Obsession review, I really appreciate YouTubers getting into the film space. Very motivating to me. And would I recommend this movie? Most definitely. I'd say get out to theaters right now and see it. And that's really the only part of this is going to be spoiler free. So if you don't want to know any spoilers, this isn't the review for you, but I really will hope that you come back and watch it after you see the movie, because I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. But with that being said, let's kind of get into some of the nitty gritty of it. So first and foremost, let's get the characters out of the way. So Clark is the main guy that owns the furniture store where the Backrooms is and where the majority of this story takes place. It's shown that he sleeps in the store. He's assumably a divorced person. We never really clarify that. But with that being said, his wife, Barbara, or ex-wife, who we are told is a student at the time they were together and didn't work, which leads him to feeling like he was wronged, not supported, and was just supporting somebody and not appreciated for the work he was doing. And in the beginning of the movie, we're introduced to somebody that's unnamed until Clark finds his badge later on. And he's assumably part of a team of people that we kind of see in the end, which I'll get into that too. This movie's very all over the place. And as I was jotting down notes, I really struggled to keep it cohesive because there was just so much going on in this and I had so many different categories to cover. But also Kat and Bobby are 2 supporting characters, which are actually Clark's employees, which play a small role in the story, but I actually think have a really strong ability to make you feel something, because they're very good comedic relief characters for the short time they're on screen, and then their untimely demises are simply due to Clark and his ambition to find something new, to feel important. And then you have Mary the therapist, which is a really layered character, and I'm going to get into that too, because she's a therapist, but she's really screwed up herself. She has a lot of trauma that they play into later on in the movie. So overall, the characters... Oh, and I forgot to mention the unknown guy at the beginning. We later see what I assume is his name tag, and it's Warren Naran, or Naran Warren. I couldn't make it out which one was first and last in time, but I know it's one of those. So as far as the plot and pacing, they immediately set the scene. Like almost immediately off the first shots of the movie, it opens up with somebody in the Backrooms, and it's shot on a like VHS looking camcorder type of device, which is used throughout the movie. But in this first scene, it shows empty rooms that slowly start to be filled as we're following this character that we don't know yet. But it immediately establishes the idea of randomness and terror, because as the person's going through the back rooms, you start to see all of the different furniture and random items popping up that seem to have no real reason or rhyme. And it establishes the terror because you hear all the noises, but you don't really see much for the first part. And then the therapy with Clark early on, as well, is something early on in the movie that shows he is very distressed, a very distraught person, has a lot of internal demons that he's dealing with in the first therapy session you see with his therapist, which ends up playing into themes and plot lines later in the movie that really make you go back and look at that a lot differently than you did originally. And as far as the pacing, Clark finds the Backrooms about 15 minutes into the movie. It doesn't take long for that to get introduced. You slowly, you're introduced to the Backrooms immediately as the movie starts, and then you kind of get a little bit of explanation on who Clark is, a little bit of his backstory, why he owns a furniture store in the first place. So I thought that was really well the way they did that. They established that the Backrooms are scary very early on because, even Clark is very scared when he first touches through the wall and just phases through it like a ghost, but over time he seems to become used to it, which ultimately leads to his and other people's demise, but we'll get into that more later. But one thing that I thought was really cool that they did is when he first goes in the Backrooms, he sees a stop sign that's obviously there to tell him, hey bud, stop what you're doing and don't go any further. At least that's the way I took it, which doesn't really make much sense because the Backrooms is obviously a entity or a place, whatever it is, that is trying to lead people in there. But I think the Backrooms knew that he wouldn't listen to the stop sign. They knew that he had ambition to continue to explore and find things, so he wasn't ever going to listen to that warning. So I think that was really just more to show us the psyche of Clark. And something that I found very interesting, a character named Phil, which I didn't introduce when I went through the characters because we don't even really know if he's real. There's a character named Phil and we don't learn his name until the end of the movie. He's unnamed for majority of it. And he's only in a few scenes, but you see him watching Clark on a TV monitor, and it has the date as 1990. Now, I'm not positive, but I believe this movie's supposed to be set in like modern day 2026. So it's kind of odd there. And then there's scenes at the end of the movie which make you question, was this even a real person the whole time? And if not, then what was the point of the scenes of him watching from a facility that doesn't exist? I don't know. That's something we'll have to get into later. Don't want to jump fully into that right now. But it slowly kind of, he goes in with the employees. He goes in with Kat and Bobby with supplies and a camcorder, which I really appreciate the use of that the whole time that he's in there with Bobby and Kat. It uses the camcorder style footage from the beginning of the movie, which gives it like a really eerie and original internet creepypasta vibe. So I think that was a really nice touch for fans of these type of movies, which I certainly am. It gets super fast paced at that point, once Bobby is actually pulled down a ramp or a tunnel type of deal, and Kat then disappears, and we find out what happened to her later, but I'll get to that soon. That part of the movie was super intense, had my heart beating. Everybody in the theater was definitely reacting to that, which I'll get into that in my part about the theater experience, but there were varied reactions to many of the scenes in this movie, and you'll understand what I mean if you watch it or have already watched it. Now, there was a genuinely scary boss fight. Like, I got chills near the end of the movie when Mary, the therapist, is fighting the big captain monster that is essentially a big amalgamation version of Clark. Probably the scariest damn thing in the movie. Like, the creature design on that alone was terrifying. When he first shows up from the drawing that she sees when she goes in there, it's just chills from that. There's a major tone shift when she's captured by hazmated people and taken to a facility. But again, that happens near the end of the movie where we don't really know. We just don't know this is all real because you think it is. You think she's been captured and being studied by this guy who claims he's a backrooms aficionado, essentially, somebody that studies the backrooms, that goes by Phil, which is the guy that was watching our main character on the TV earlier. You know, I'm not really positive. I couldn't wrap my head around exactly what was going on there. I believe what's happening is that maybe that facility is where people get trapped when they get turned into a deformed creature in the backrooms. Because essentially that's another theme of this, that the backrooms remembers people and has a replica essentially of people and things in the back room. Like everything that exists is in there, but truly you have to be captured by the back rooms to have yourself in there. And then I guess your true self is trapped somewhere else, because the end scene, which also was very chilling, we see that she has been turned in, like Mary has been turned into a deformed creature like the ones we see previously in the movie. She's been turned into a backroom entity, which I know I just skipped through a lot of the plot right there, but I'm going to delve further into it with these next sections, because there's some of the atmospheric and horror elements that they had. The lighting was super effective throughout, the way that they had it dimly lit and then also very vibrantly lit depending on the tone they were wanting to convey, and sometimes both at once, or you'll have a long corridor where some of the lights are out, some are on, and they did it very effectively where, you know, the sound design mixed with the lighting and the way it flickers, the way that it reacts to the characters, just beautiful on that. Awesome contrast, like I said, with the VHS style to the HD camera, where it's more the HD camera for the shots outside of the bathroom, and also at the end, you know, near the end, once Bobby has died and the camera has essentially been taken by the captain, is what I assume happened. I think it's really cool how you see the monster early on, essentially the captain or whatever the version of the monster is that killed the guy that starts the movie, and he's killed off screen by it, but you briefly kind of see it in the shadows but can't make it out. There's something that they did really well, which is certain comedical aspects in the movie, which is another thing that Obsession did really well that I love about this movie also, is there's an ad for the furniture that Clark does where he's dressed up as the pirate. And I really found that scene to be funny, especially where he like falls out of the chair. It's just, that was a great tension breaking scene. But then when Clark's first in the backrooms, one of the scenes that really got me was there's a talking cutout that he sees that shows up later on at the end of the movie too. But essentially it flies. It flies through where he just came from. Like he's looking through a tunnel back from where he just came from and sees the cutout just go flying. And he escapes through a small door and he's just absolutely terrified. And then another scene that fucking, man, this one really got me, was a Christmas tree room where it's just red. It's just a red tint to the room, and he's looking around and there's just like baby dolls on the floor, and then he gets around to this like deformed person next to a lamp, and you can't even really tell us what it is at first, but it's confirmed later. And then another woman, this deformed looking woman, comes out of nowhere, and then it just cuts. You don't really know what happened. And that was really one of the most terrifying scenes to me, because that's the first time that you see one of the deformed people in the back rooms, and also just one of the best set design, like the way it was shot, just absolutely creepy. It was still in that VHS style footage, so just awesome. The set design overall was amazing. The back room seemed to shift to kind of lead people towards what it wants them to do. And it's like an ever-evolving thing that seems to have really anything from somebody's memory within it. The true horror, too, is in Clark becoming insane and basically the villain of the story towards the climax of the movie, because he just completely goes off the rocker. I mean, he essentially lures his therapist in there just to appease his own mind and what he, like I said, his ambition driving him to madness. He's sitting there trying to make his therapist be his wife, and it's just very unsettling because it's really just reads like a desperate, crazy man that has just came to a wit's end, just trapping somebody in their own personal hellscape. And just the horror of that, something I didn't expect to happen, but I'm glad it did because it gave just an extra oomph to the movie that I think it really benefited from. As far as the sound design and music, there's a low tone, just like whirring noise kind of in the beginning when the movie first opens up and you're in the back room. It's like just a very like unnerving but not loud sound. It has a good use of the swell where the music kind of builds to create tension, but it doesn't overdo it or make it super dramatic. The whirring's there when Clark enters the Backrooms too, and it's kind of always there along with whatever other sounds are mixed in there with it. You hear banging from where you just came from, which is like, that scene was also really scary when he first started hearing noises from the room he just came from. There's this thing they do where there's another language being spoken through a radio in the beginning, and I believe near the end they kind of start playing it again too, and I think that ties in with the first guy we see in the back rooms and the team of people that I guess investigates it, if that's even really what's going on. He hears Kat but can't get to her, like she's on one-way glass, I guess is what was happening, and she can see him, but he can't see her. And this is before he goes crazy and shit. And the captain, I assume is who it was, comes and picks up the camera, and then it cuts and we don't see him again until Mary comes and finds him, and all of the crazy shit unfolds there. And then when Mary, the therapist, actually enters the bathrooms, there's like a pounding dramatic music as she enters it and up until then. But then back to the low buzz for a minute when she enters, and then there's a various mix of sounds as she's walking through there. All of them I think were very effective. As far as the visuals and cinematography, I loved even the opening where the A24 logo kind of matches the yellow theme of the Backrooms. The look, how it was shot on VHS and throughout a lot of the early parts of the movie, love that touch. Some things being upside down I thought was a really nice touch to kind of convey that it's from the real world, but everything is slightly altered in the Backrooms. Clark actually finds a bird too that is dead, but we saw seemingly get killed but then fly off with the original guy. So I thought that was a really interesting callback. Tunnels in the Backrooms was a really cool visual thing and a really cool like metaphor for looking back at your past, really, because I think for Clark a lot of this really is stemmed from his past. And then the empty store with furniture and like the normal music when Mary first enters the store is like really oddly unsettling, considering the last time we saw Clark, something picked up the camera, and as far as we know he's been killed. So it's really ominous to see her come in there and the store just be deadly still with normal music playing, given the composition of the rest of the film's shots and scenes. And there's a shot that shows Mary's childhood home that slowly descends deeper into the Backrooms, was actually used from the trailer, so I'll probably be able to pop up a little bit of what I'm talking about here, but that was a really effective shot. I love that. It was truly unsettling, the shot where Clark starts eating the deformed people and shows Kat's head in the fridge, implying that either he killed her or the pirate monster killed her. Either way, he was very unremorseful about that, which told me at that point he had already went crazy, as if it kind of wasn't already obvious before. And there's this weird like gelatinous texture within these deformed people that are in the Backrooms that almost looks like a fucked up version of ice cream. Just, oh man, that was truly disturbing. It was scary as hell when the captain's chasing Mary. Like that whole sequence, the way it was shot and the sound design during that, really like the big bad chase scene. that got me. It had my heart pounding for sure. The shot where Mary's on a ledge in that sequence and there's like a million rooms, almost looks like an open plan for a hotel, except there's no actual balconies. It's just an endless pit where you can see a bunch of rooms that just have one wall missing where you can see into them. It's a shot that I can't even do justice explaining. Maybe I'll be able to find a picture of it, but as somebody that's afraid of heights, that was really got me. The back room shows shots of Mary's home and really like everywhere she's been near the end of the movie, which implies that she is starting to be consumed into the back rooms is the way I took it. Some big moments in it that I thought were important is they find a random switch on the breaker that wasn't there before in the early parts of the movie when an electrician comes to check out the store. And I think that was the first indication that something was up. And that's really the first like thing you see changed, which is odd because that's not even within the back rooms, but it's connected to the wall of it, which makes me wonder, can the back rooms control it? Like, is that store the back rooms? Can it just control that whole property? Who knows? Bobby goes down a ramp and finds a ton of laundry, like right, before he actually gets pulled back down and dies. He goes down there originally with the camera and it's just like a laundry room full of clothes, which honestly is disturbing when you think about the implications of it, because I personally believe that it was the clothes of all the people that have been lost in the back rooms and transformed in there, which is a lot if that's the case. The therapist gets a call from Clark after he's last shown with unknown whereabouts. So Mary actually gets a call from Clark that gets her to come to the back rooms once we see the shot of the camera being picked up and Kat trying to talk to him, not being able to talk or not being able to get to him. So that was really weird. Didn't really know if that was like him really calling or something else. And I honestly still don't know if maybe he was manipulated by the entity. But I honestly think it was really just Clark, a lot of this stuff. But Clark strangles Mary, which really confused me at first because it seemed like I guess he was trying to save her in his own twisted way because the captain was about to come kill her if he would have seen her, and I don't know, but that whole sequence where he chokes her and she wakes up at the dinner table, scary as hell. All the people from the Christmas tree room are at the table and she wakes up and Clark's just sitting across there, and that's where the scene of him trying to get her to be his wife and everything else happens, where he eats the people and finds Kat's head in the freezer, or shows it. He already knew it was there. And then as Clark seems to have lost his mind, obviously, he tells her that he wants to stay there, that it's just how he's wired. And the captain comes in there and he tries to talk to the captain saying, oh, it's okay, she knows it's just how we're wired. And then the captain picks him up and just demolishes him, just kills him. And I honestly wasn't expecting that. But I should have known, because from the painting, it's essentially the same thing where he's lifted up and killed by the captain, which is essentially just a bigger version of Clark, which was a really good design because it's just very uncanny, very freaky. How after Clark's killed, you have this big, massive pirate version of him chasing after the final girl, which wasn't really a final girl in the end because of what happened to her, but I guess she's still alive in some sense of the word. But as far as the theater experience, it was a packed line to even get in there to begin with. And the theater was super packed. There was nearly no empty seats at all. And there was even some people I recognized, like old co-workers in there, which was funny. That shows you how big the movie was. Multiple people I went to high school with were in there. Rain was hitting the roof the whole time, which kind of honestly added ambiance from the real world into the movie. People laughed when Clark was explaining to the therapist about the Backrooms originally, just because it kind of did have comedic undertones to it, like us included. We were laughing at that. And people were shocked and laughing about a lot of the scenes, mainly where Clark is kind of being a psychopath and going through and, like I said, eating the people, talking to the therapist. about his trauma, essentially the way he did earlier in the movie, but just in a way more manic manner. A lot of people were laughing about that type of shit, and a lot of people were really shocked by it, grossed out, whatever you want to call it. And that shows really two different sides of horror fans, and I really lie on both sides depending on the scene. And now some things I personally found interesting about the movie is Clark is actually a recovering alcoholic, or at least that's what I thought when I was first watching the therapy scene. But no, it's actually shown that he still does drink, which probably doesn't lead to anything good in the story, I would imagine. Probably, if anything, contributes a lot to the events of the story. And I also noticed the entire store is on sale, which implies that he does have a really struggling business, which I think kind of leads into him being so willing to accept the back rooms. And the employees, like I said earlier, are actually really good side characters, even though they're only on screen for a very short time. I enjoyed the comedical relief for the short time that they were on there, especially when they had the line about them being high. Like, I was like, oh man, as a stoner, hey. But Mary's flashbacks actually show that she had a crazy mom, or schizophrenic mom, a mom that had psychological issues where she trapped her in the house and kind of made her scared to go outside, and then it shows her eventually being booked into a psychiatric ward, which kind of explains some of the scenes we see of her where she obviously lives alone and is taking some type of drugs herself. I couldn't tell in the one scene if she was taking a weed gummy or if it was some type of pill, if something in a bag. But that's why I said she's a layered character, because there's really a lot going on there. And another thing I found interesting, Mary really starts to get through to Clark, honestly, like as his therapist. I think she gets through to him human to human until the captain shows up and just absolutely wrecks the party, sends the rest of the movie in the chaos from there. But there was a brief moment where that human connection almost prevailed. And Mary explains the Backrooms at the end of the movie to this Phil character, question mark, for real, using the same words that Clark said to her earlier in the movie, which I thought was a really strong effect too, because even looking back at the monster near the end, I think she starts to kind of feel really bad for Clark as she realizes that he didn't ever really want any of the things that just happened, but it's really due to him that they did, which is a very strong thing to have in a movie, because it's very real. A lot of times your ambition, even though not sinister in nature, can lead you down some dark paths. And some of the themes getting into that, because there's some really strong themes in this. The curiosity / the loop, which is something they explicitly say early on in the movie when Mary's talking to Clark. She describes it as always looking for something new but feeling stuck. And I think that describes Clark's point of view and mindset perfectly. I think he feels stuck in the life that's been kind of created due to his decisions, but in his mind also due to the decisions of other people that he feels held him back and didn't let him become the architect that he wanted to. And now he's stuck selling furniture until he finds these back rooms that are full of mystery. Loneliness is another big theme in this. And like I said, I believe the therapist is also a very lonely person, but I'm mainly talking about the loneliness of Clark feeling no support really in the past in his mind from the people around him. So he feels that the back rooms is somewhere he can be himself and express himself and have other people around him, even if they are deformed creatures. And I think that's really what leads him to wanting to stay there, as he tells her. And the Backrooms remembers things different from the outside. It remembers them almost one-to-one, except something's changed about them. Whether it be the people, the objects, but the people are changed the most. Because they, as we see with Mary at the end, unfortunately, and with the other unnamed characters that are around the table and in the Christmas tree room, they're people from the real world that have been, I assume, sucked into the back rooms and made to be essentially puppets that can be turned into anything. Just subhuman creatures at that point. And avoidance. Clark seems to blame everyone for his problems except for himself, which ultimately leads to his demise and everybody around him. Because if he could have just faced his demons earlier on, you know, then he may have never explored and went as deep into the back rooms as he did. And like I said earlier, a man's ambition leading him to madness, I believe, is the biggest theme of this movie. Because truly it was Clark that brought his employees into the back rooms. He's the one that lured Mary into the back rooms as his concerned therapist. And he ends up getting them all either killed, transformed, whatever you want to call it. 2 of them are for sure just dead. And Mary, well, her fate is possibly even worse than death, being trapped in a mind facility while her body is mangled into whatever deformed creature the back rooms turns her into. And his ambition to be something more, I truly think is what led him into the back rooms to begin with. What gave him that curiosity, that want for more, to find out what truly was the back rooms, what could he find in there, what power could he potentially gain from being in that space. But ultimately all he gains is death of other people on his hands, although not directly, very directly, honestly. I mean, he didn't do it with his own hands, except potentially Kat, we don't know, but he led to all these people dying, and it was all because he couldn't face his demons and would rather drag other people into his personal hell that I believe the Backrooms was meant to be. And ultimately, overall, that's what I got. The movie was going so fast, I didn't have time to write down absolutely everything, but I know this was a pretty lengthy review regardless. So I hope you guys really enjoyed it. If you made it all the way to the end, you're a fucking legend. I appreciate you. Make sure to subscribe, like, send this to somebody else that you know watched the movie or maybe can't get out to see it and just wants to see somebody ramble about it. I'd greatly appreciate it. And with all that being said, man, shout out to Kane Parsons, A24, every other studio that was, I think, Atomic Zombie. Don't quote me on that, but one of the other studios is very popular. I'm bad with remembering names a lot of the time. But yeah, shout out to all the studios involved with this. Obviously, Kane Parsons, big shout out to him for this debut film. Can't wait to see what else he has coming. Hopefully a sequel to Backrooms, and if not, hopefully another concept that's even more expansive. Who knows what the future holds. But overall, I'm very happy with the health of the horror genre this year so far. It seems like these 2 movies are very big benchmarks for, okay, good horror movies can still be made. We don't have to rely on cheap jump scares and loud sounds. You can truly get creative, as Obsession and now Backrooms has really shown me. And I'm excited to see some more horror movies that are coming out this year, because I know there's a big lineup. I've been seeing a lot of previews I'm looking forward to. One I'm mainly looking forward to is the new Scary Movie, because the Wayans brothers got it back. Not really fully horror, but still in that genre. Big fan of those earlier movies. So yeah, without rambling on anymore, man, hope y'all enjoyed this review, and I'll catch y'all on whatever I do next.